Hello guys,
Hey.
how you doing? It's the 12th of June today, and that makes it day 84 of our lockdown. I don't know about you, Chris, but I am tired. Yeah, don't know what's going on with me today, but I made the dreadful mistake of going for a nap at about, what, 7?
Yeah, and then at nearly 10 o'clock, I thought, oh, I should probably crack on with cooking the dinner.
Quarter to 10ish, I think I actually woke up and I was on my phone in the bed, and then it was only because Lucy had jumped on the bed.
Yeah, because I was just waiting for you to wake up, and then we'd crack on with evening things, and then just
Yeah, I think
lost
I
all track of
could
time.
have quite easily just gone to bed, actually, I think. So I've picked up a little bit now because I've eaten and things, but yeah, I'm a sleepy girl today.
My hair looks scruffy.
Yeah, well, to be fair, you did get caught in an absolutely biblical downpour.
I think part of it is that
Yeah.
it's got a bit fluffy from the rain, but also, like, I wore it like swept back in like a what is it, a headband or hairband yesterday for most because because it's getting very long and I was sick of it getting in my eyes, and because I wore it like that for most of the day, I think it's now kind of
got a kink in it.
Well, it's kind of fallen. It's not so much the kink; it's fallen sideways in a way that it seems to be staying out of my eyes, which is good. But I don't like the kind of the centre parting long hair. I feel like my t-shirt says Paul McCartney and Wings, but I have the hair of someone who listens to a lot of like the Foo Fighters and Nirvana.
What's wrong with that?
No, I mean those are great bands. I love them, but I
That's
just
funny face.
no. I feel like I look more like I looked when I was a teenage boy.
Right. Having a like 90s grunge sort of look about you.
Yeah, and maybe normally these days I like to wear my hair a bit shorter and neater. And it's
that's why I'm dragging my feet on all these little filming projects, because when they're all done, I'm gonna have to cut your hair, and I'm gonna do such a bad job.
Well, also every day I think, oh, we might do some filming today, and this is the most feeble excuse that anyone has ever used for anything in the world. But every day I think, oh, I really should try and get some exercise done today, and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to get sweaty in case we do some filming, and then we don't do the filming. But I've done some editing today though, so that was good.
Today we could have done the face to camera stuff if I was in a better state, but I essentially was a write-off today. But yeah, there's some stuff that we need to do outside which we could not have done today. It got biblical, and just at the point when I had some bits and bobs to send, the prints that I mentioned that I was vlogging. I was giving them away in return for donations to causes. But yeah, a few of them needed to be posted. So Chris kindly, I was going to say offered, I asked if he'd go to the post office for me.
Happy to do it.
And just at around about the amount of time it would have taken to be nearer, probably equally close to the post office as to home, what was a shower turned into an absolute torrential downpour, the likes of which I don't think I've seen as prolonged and heavy. Like, it was proper rain.
No, I was happy to go along to our little local kind of corner shop / post office because it's Ellie's birthday on Monday and I needed to pick her up a present, so got that covered now.
See, if I believed it for a minute, like, I don't even care what you've got me, but you've been excited about my birthday for longer than I've been excited about my birthday, which is adorable.
What else have we got to look forward to?
That's true. Yeah, there's not a lot going on.
Canoeing.
Yeah, we're going canoeing on Sunday. A bit of a sort of happy, not accident for us, but basically, obviously, with everything that's going on, Alan, who's one of my brothers, booked it ages ago, pre-COVID, for a trip with some friends who live much further afield, and due to the travel restrictions, obviously that's no longer possible. But as it's the day before my birthday, he asked if we wanted to go instead. So although I'm very nervous about doing any physical activity after a long period of doing nothing at all, I think it'll be lovely to sort of just blow out some cobwebs, get out of the house. It does involve an early start though.
That's the bit I'm nervous about. I'm also worried that we're doing that on the Sunday. The Monday's your birthday, you're just going to be wiped out.
Well, what I'm hoping I'm going to do, because obviously, like, physical activity will bugger my fibro in general, although actually I'm hoping I'll probably be at my worst the day after my birthday. So if I power through, but yeah, I think maybe post-canoeing, maybe quite quick blog when we get in, and then I can get an early night or a long bath, maybe like in, long bath, blog, bed. And then actually I might end up being up at a more sensible time. So yeah, what I'm going to do tonight is, I'm not going to be able to go to sleep early because I can't ever, but also I've got used to not getting up until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon these days. Like it's pretty bad. But we've got to actually be at the canoeing place at like 8:30 it's 8:30 or 8:45 on Sunday morning, which is essentially the middle of the night for me.
That's not a time when fun starts. What's happening?
So yeah, I think what I'm going to do tomorrow is try and get up at about 10ish, so that I'll hate that. I will hate every second of that. But if I get up and sort of force myself up, go have a shower and do some stuff in the day, I'm hoping that then I will be able to get to sleep at a sort of sensible time tomorrow night, in order to wake up. Because what I don't want is to get up at the time I need to and drag myself out there, but then feel like ill and rough because I'm not used to the sleep. So I kind of probably should have got up earlier today, really. But so I'm not looking forward to that element of it, but actually just something that's a bit different. And being out of the house really generally will be a novelty for me. I don't really leave the house much at all anymore. I have had 1 or 2 people come visit and stay in the garden, which is really nice and actually does sort of break things up a little bit. And actually we got some friends coming over tomorrow afternoon doing that as well, which will be lovely. Obviously can only do sort of a couple of hours kind of thing, because although people are allowed in each other's gardens, you're not allowed inside each other's houses to go to the loo. So that will sort of limit the time span. Although I checked the rules on that. You are allowed to use the loo in people's houses in England, but you're not allowed to use the loos in people's houses in Wales. But it turns out there is method in that madness, because Wales has just today been confirmed of all of the areas in the UK to be decreasing the R rate faster than anywhere else.
Yes.
So what we are doing is working, and I sort of thought that all of the measures, I've been pretty happy with the measures that they've been putting in place, to be honest. That is with the case being before the schools have reopened, and I don't know if that will affect whether or not those plans. Next Friday is the day we get our 3-week announcement for what the sort of current plans are. But there were sort of mentionings last time, so 2 weeks ago, of if you work in non-essential shops, be prepared to potentially be opening from the Monday and get some stuff in motion. So I'm anticipating, with the success of the R rate coming down, it's probably going to be along those lines, that maybe non-essential shops can reopen like we saw in England, and maybe similar sort of rules coming in to what they announced this week in England is actually one of their decisions that I am wholeheartedly behind, which is that only for people who live alone, you can nominate any other household of any number of people as a single other household that you can basically interact with without worrying about social distancing. So that means you could go over, you could stay, you could give the people who live there a hug. So if this would work really well for, obviously, people who live alone but have partners and miss them and haven't been able to sort of hug their partner, but also perhaps older people who live alone so that they can see their children, their grandchildren maybe even, as long as it's restricted to that one household. And I think obviously that doesn't count for the groups that are shielding, because the risk is still too high for anyone who is immunocompromised or anything like that, but at least it will be a lifeline to a lot more people, I think. So that's lovely. I think like that, I imagine we might see something similar to that here, of maybe nominated a household. So you couldn't have like, you basically, you pick your household and that's it. You can't sort of 1 week be with one household and the next week be with another one.
Chain of different households.
Because then, you're going to be passing stuff on.
It's very difficult, because obviously we've appreciated the ways in which things have eased, just in tiny ways, of friends being able to come over and visit in the garden, or us go around to your parents' house and see in their garden.
That's really felt like a big difference, sort of well-being wise.
Especially when the weather's been nice. So it is
it's difficult.
Tricky when
soon as they relaxed the restrictions that you could meet people outdoors, the heavens opened. It was like that. Well done, Wales. Cheers for that.
Yeah.
But that's standard UK irony, isn't it?
It is
but
tricky, but but we have appreciated all those things, but at the same time, and there are other ways in which we wish things could go back to normal a bit more quickly. But at the same time, it does seem to be that in Wales we've been a bit stricter and a bit tighter than England. And we do have the best R rate in the UK, despite the fact that Newport was something of a hotbed.
Yes,
for it at the start.
It really
of all this.
was.
So it was quite a scary time
at times,
locally.
I think, in step and switching places a few times in between, which was worse, London or Newport. And London, you kind of expect because it's such a huge city.
Massive,
and has
such
amount of. It's hugely densely populated. Everybody, in order to travel around London, even locally, you're going to be getting on tubes and buses, and you're going to be mixing with lots of people. So you expect that of London. You don't really expect it of Newport. I think it was a bit of a, they don't know exactly why, but a bit of a sort of freak of circumstance of maybe somebody came into contact with quite a lot of people and was what they call a super spreader quite early on, and just a bit of bad luck, really. But yeah, it kind of exploded quite big time here. So it is really encouraging to see that we seem to have as much of a handle on it as we can. And the thing is, if we do manage to keep pushing that R rate down, eventually cases will be manageable enough that the track and trace systems will be reliable enough to more confidently ease more lockdown measures in one go, because you'll have the confidence that anyone who does pop up with an infection, you can kind of nip it in the bud by getting everybody to self-isolate. Now, I watched one. I've tend to have stopped actually watching the daily press conferences because they're long, they're dull, and I don't tend to entirely believe what's being said. So what I tend to do is look up the sort of summary of what the facts and the figures are, because there's so much waffling about and not really saying not really answering the questions, and just generally being duplicitous sons of bitches. But I did watch the one this week, which had Dido Harding, who is sort of the leading lady when it comes to the NHS test and trace system, talking about the sort of how has it been after the first week of it running. Basically, the party line on that is it is constantly improving. They seem to get to the bottom of, I think it was about 67% of the people who had positive COVID tests, they managed to get in touch with and get them to agree to self-isolate. And of those, they managed to track down about 82% of their contacts. Because obviously, you can give your contacts, but they might not be reachable. Almost everybody they spoke to and asked to isolate said they would self-isolate. Obviously, some people take these things more serious than others, and people might say that they're going to self-isolate because they think they'll get in trouble if they say they're not gonna. So it's all to be taken with a pinch of salt. But it's essentially, I think, until there's far fewer cases and a much more reliable app, which there's controversy over the app because of data mining issues and the companies involved not necessarily being the most trustworthy.
And also the amount of space and battery it takes up on your phone.
Because you'll have to have your location data on
to use for all my other things
all the time. And what I do is normally or most of the time. That's a fibro brain thing. Normal time. I turn location services off unless I'm using them, basically, so for maps and stuff. So at home they would be off, but the app would look at that probably as you've turned location data off so that you can leave and be untraced. So I don't know if it'll even allow you to. I don't know how that will work. Also, they have concluded that they won't work in. It won't give reliable data if somebody lives in a tower block or high-rise flats or in a heavily populated building, because it won't be able to it'll be able to tell if you've left the building, but it won't reliably be able to tell who you've come into contact with, because anybody that lives in that building you might have contacted. They're not going to be able to tell that you're higher or lower. And
it'd be very frustrating if you were living on like the top floor of a thing, and then suddenly get someone else.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be. I think essentially they wouldn't be able to say everybody in that building has to self-isolate. So I think it would just be they would have to just go by your named contacts that you know you've come into contact with. Whereas the app, the idea behind the app is it will flag up with people who've been in contact with you that you might not necessarily have their contact information. So it's all a bit fuzzy. The thing that's a bit baffling is Germany had created a system which works perfectly well and offered it to us for free, and we said no and instead spent lots of money on another company doing it, which is classic Tory bullshit, isn't it? There was money to be made, so somebody wanted to make it. Can't take freebies when there's money to be made. But yeah, it's kind of bullshit because the system already worked, and you'd think if your priority was public safety, you would grab whatever help was offered to you with both hands.
And it's the public's money that's being spent on that, isn't it? Yeah. Which is being stretched.
But it's being given to people that the Tories are friends with, so that's how that goes.
We were talking about how the R rate is low here, and that maybe the restrictions here account for that.
Yeah.
On the opposite side of that coin, but kind of proving the same point, over in the good old US of A.
Yes, within the 2 weeks, around about exactly when you'd expect, actually, within the 2 weeks of most states reopening to varying degrees, admittedly, we're starting to see a spike in cases. In fact, 14 US states, not only having a bit of an increase, they're actually having record highs of new cases per day, suggesting that they hadn't peaked yet and they're on their way to a peak. So reopening seemed like it was too soon, which is what anyone with half a fucking brain cell could see, that it was too soon when it wasn't in control. You can only allow people to mingle once the chances that the people they're mingling with have got this and don't know about it are lower. And that's what Mark Drakeford, who's the Welsh First Minister, keeps sort of saying is, as the infection rate drops, thus the chances of somebody you do mix with having it drops, which makes mingling with other people less of a risk. That's only true if you've got it under relative control in the population. At the moment, I think it's about only 1 in 1,000 people that you come into contact with might have it, judging by how many cases have been. So your odds are good even if you're not entirely socially distancing all the time. Although obviously, if you socially distance or self-isolate, your chances go to 100% of not coming into contact with someone. Socially distancing, obviously, it's risk factors involved. It's not a hard and fast science of, if you stayed 2 meters away, you guaranteed won't catch it. You could get bad luck, could be a breeze, could be whatever, but it massively increases your odds of avoiding infection. And also, if you're in the same place for longer periods of time, then the distance between you becomes less effective. And there's lots of not perfect science about it, but they can, with those sorts of things, judge it by other viruses that are passed under similar circumstances. Obviously, how contagious a virus is sort of that boils down to the biology of that particular virus. But judging by modelling and sort of working out what the maths are, you can kind of make good guesses based on, okay, in this sort of space with this sort of humidity and XYZ, you can do modelling to sort of work out roughly. And so that's where the 2 meter distancing rule came into. That seemed like that was advised as most cautious and safe. I think the World Health Organization actually only insisted on a 1 meter minimum requirement, but obviously 2 meters reduces your risk again. So that's one bit of caution that the UK have been better on, which had to happen with something, just to give enough monkeys enough typewriters, eh? But yeah, so that's really positive news for Wales. Really worrying news for the States, because at its peak, I was just looking at this to sort of check facts and figures, they're getting around about 20,000 new confirmed cases a day, but quite a lot of those are in quite tightly packed areas. So there are states that were very badly affected early on, New York being one of the prime examples. Their rate of infection is decreasing quite well, but these spikes are coming in like 1,000 odd, 2,000 odd, well, approaching 2,000 new cases in just, say, Florida. You're like, right, so Florida, which hadn't necessarily had a big old explosion, which is probably also why so many places were sort of keen to reopen, if they hadn't seen the worst of it. They didn't necessarily know people who'd had, like, I know, like, because Newport was such an explosion, I've been very lucky in that nobody directly connected with me has had a terrible time with COVID. But I know people working in the local hospital that really can report how bad it was, and basically everyone I know knows someone who's had it or has been in the hospital with it or has even lost someone to it. One of my friends, for example, her parents have lost 5 people that died, 5 deaths of COVID. So we can see it, if not directly, like second stage directly, we've seen it. Whereas if you're in a state that hasn't really exploded, and I can understand therefore kind of thinking, oh, this is a fuss over nothing, I want to go back to my haircuts, I want to go get my nails done. I get it. But it's just short-sighted, because the thing is, like, if they'd locked down more severely for a bit longer, they could have got it actually under control. And then maybe it's tricky when you're one massive country, because it's hard to stop people traveling between states. And if one state goes, right, we're going to go super strict, but other people can still fly in and fly out, it's kind of like it's hard to police.
It's a big old place with a lot of state systems. But it's, I mean, maybe that's encouraging for us in Newport. The fact that there's been kind of what seems to be quite a high peak here in Newport maybe suggests we've got the worst of it out of the way, even when things do start to ease. But I mean, who knows? But certainly, in terms of, it's yet again a case of like looking at the science, following the science, maybe thinking we shouldn't be easing things just yet, and then you look at the people who are easing things, and these spikes are happening. And it's okay. Again, it's a case of not us wanting to drag this out. You know, Ellie would like to be reopening and growing her business. Oh, God. I'd like to be going and gigging. We'd both like to be seeing more friends and family.
The timing of it is so shit, actually, in terms of business stuff, because they were like, oh, God, like...
There were exciting
things, and literally, because of the new room to launch, and actually finally taking on a new sort of permanent employee who is shit hot at what he does, we could have really exploded over this summer, because summer's usually quiet. We're not into summer yet, we're still technically the end of spring, but and summer is usually quiet, but I had loads more to offer, and I could increase my opening hours and loads of stuff, and so although I could have been in a much better financial position, and every day I'm not open is a day further away from making that a reality. Also, the building that we're in is having a big redevelopment, which like I can't even be in the office to sort of plan and prepare and get ready for that, and like it's all very I have joked, I've sort of said quite flippantly a few times that I'm kind of getting used to lockdown, and it will be strange going back to work, because it's been so long now that I have got out of the habit of having to be anywhere at a certain time, having to sort of get up at a certain time. The lifestyle has been very relaxed and very laid back, and that in itself is a nice side effect. I guess it's been a big old period of rest.
Day by day, I feel like I'm pretty good at the old lockdown. And we're, as we've said so many times before, we've got each other, we've got the pets, we've got a nice comfortable home, we've got streaming services, and I've got a whole graphic novel collection to whack through. It's, you know, we're having a lovely time. Day by day, but it's hard to kind of think about or build for the future. So it's like, it's not an unpleasant...
Sorry, my feet are being attacked by a cat.
Which one?
I don't know. I can only hear jingle bells.
Sneaky cat. It isn't an unpleasant time to be here in lockdown, you know, day by day. But like anyone, you know,
all
we want to build
sort of
for the future.
Plans are on hold, aren't they? We had a long conversation today. While I was in the bath, actually. Just a nice little visual for you there. Just about sort of how comedy is going to look when you get back to it, and how, like, will you be, like, what will happen? And there's so many massive question marks over what was our normal life, and we don't know how many of those we're ever going to get back, and the not being able to plan for them is quite dispiriting and quite frustrating, a little bit upsetting at times, and I think like the inability to sort of make future plans is probably the thing I find hardest, sort of mental health wise to deal with, because it's entirely dealing with the unknown. And I don't like that. I like plans. I like firm plans that I can work to and make minor adjustments to if I need to, but just a whole big don't know. So just having to live day by day. Yeah, in that particular day, it's nice, I guess, to just sort of go, all right, don't have to be anywhere, not a huge amount of pressure. But then, yeah, sort of thinking, well, don't know when I'm going to be able to make any money. Don't know if I'm going to be able to stay. I'm probably not going to be able to stay on 80% of what I was on until October, because the furlough scheme is going to be reduced based on businesses starting to pay in their own share. But I can't speak for other businesses. We haven't got a lot of money in the pot right now, so if we start having to contribute, say 20% and then 30% of the employer's wages to keep them on the furlough scheme, well, we'll probably last about a month before we run out of money.
Because some businesses, can bring some employees back or open in a limited capacity.
Well, that's the thing. It depends. Like, if that's going to be flexible based on its businesses that have been allowed to reopen that are expected to chip in, then I kind of think that's fair. But if I'm still ordered to not open, I'm not making any money, so I can't pay any money.
And it's hard to predict as well, both in stand-up comedy or in escape rooms. And this is true of many other businesses, but those are the two that directly affect us. But it's hard to predict how much these things, not just when we're allowed to do them again, but
will people
embrace them? Will people go, oh, I'm not sure about going to a room where I have to
I'm not sure about doing an indoor activity. And
I'm not sure about going and sitting in a room with lots of other people to watch a comedian, and it's...
people might be absolutely crying out for it, but also quite a lot of people, like ourselves, will probably be feeling quite cautious. I'm certainly not going to be in the first wave of people going out and doing things the moment we're allowed to do them. And I think, so I'm not really expecting lots of people to be. I will open when I'm allowed to open, and if people will book, I'll be glad to take their money, and I'll be glad to run a game. I might I'll be so rusty. Thankfully, I think I know the game's inside out, but it'll be so long since I've done one.
Yeah.
That remembering what goes where, it'll be a bonkers experience. I might have to have a few friends in to do a couple of practice
runs. I feel like that
runs.
about comedy, just going, how do I do that?
Do I remember any of my material?
What is happening? And will any of it feel relevant in a post-pandemic world? And you can try and I've tried to write some stuff, and I feel quite rusty at writing, and you can't really test it out very easily. It's a weird old time. A weird old time. There's a couple of stories I wanted to catch up on that are kind of a few days old now, but the vlogs have been so full of what's been going on in the news and everything that some things have kind of fallen through the cracks that I wanted to mention. First of all, a couple of days ago on Sainsbury's. I
didn't understand.
I haven't got fibro brain. I've got no excuse. A couple of days ago on Twitter, it was one of the things there was a hashtag that was trending that was hashtag boycott Sainsbury's.
Yeah, which when you told me that, I was like, oh no, what have they done? Assuming oh god, they've said something anti-BLM or some shitty thing.
And it turns out Lord Sainsbury actually came out in support of Black Lives Matter.
So people are calling to boycott Sainsbury's. But you'll understand, we don't have a problem with racism in this country. Oh my god, this is the thing. It's so bonkers. People can't see it. The fact that you're angry about Black Lives Matter is kind of proving their point, isn't it?
It's very racist, isn't it, to be angry about Black Lives Matter. It just is. And I think the silver lining is, if you are looking to kind of get a delivery or a click and collect, then check out the Sainsbury's website. There might be some gaps freed up from all the racists who don't want their groceries there anymore.
I bet they're not principled though. I bet they'll still freaking boycott Sainsbury's.
I think it was your friend Kim who pointed out on Facebook, I think under one of these blogs where we were talking about the racists who couldn't find the right brand of tea
the tea
to
drinking
buy.
racists.
And your friend Kim pointed out, well, good luck to them finding a tea that's grown in Britain. It's not a thing,
Yeah,
is it?
it's just like, no, we don't have the climate for it here, guys. There was actually, a few years ago it was, but it sort of did the rounds, like, it got screenshotted and did the rounds, which was quite funny, of some idiot who thought that Yorkshire tea was grown in Yorkshire. I was just like, oh, mate, there are so many things wrong with that assumption. Like, it's just called Yorkshire tea because it's, like, packaged up and sold in Yorkshire. But, yeah, it's just, oh, bless you. But that sort of, it does bring me on to the thing that, essentially, I've been saying the same point for a few days in different ways. And social media is exhausting at the moment because, but, yeah, if you're, like, there's so many people that are angry about Black Lives Matter, using usually the excuse of fears of coronavirus with protests, which I can understand. That is a reasonable thing to be concerned with. But you weren't equally concerned and equally vocal when people were having VE Day parties a few weeks ago when we were much closer to the peak. Also, you're not kicking off about shops reopening. You're excited about pubs reopening. So essentially, this isn't about social distancing. That's just a convenient excuse. It's that you don't like people are marching for Black Lives Matter, really. I can't really see many other ways of interpreting it. Because if it is genuinely just about the social distancing thing, and you've been equally rabid about all of the other things, then I've got a bit of sympathy for you. But it doesn't look good. And so many people in these comment sections are absolutely fervently saying they're not racist, Britain's not racist, they've never seen anyone being mistreated because of race, this is all bullshit, they are just making this out like to be anti-white. And it's like, well, that in itself as an opinion is pretty fucking racist. They are just trying, it's like, no, like, right, them and us is not really a very helpful way of looking at the world anyway.
No.
But if you're saying that basically because you've got a black mate and you don't use the N-word that you're not racist, but you're kicking off about Black Lives Matter marches,
and you hear that,
then you probably need to have a bit of a closer look at why you're angry. And maybe there's some uncomfortable truths that nobody wants. Well, actually, some people are quite proud to call themselves racist, but they are few and far between. Most people who are behaving, to my eyes, flagrantly racist will still keep banging the drum of, I'm not racist. But if you're saying those phrases, everything before but is bullshit. Same as, I'm not homophobic, I'm not sexist. If you're pronouncing it, you probably, to be honest, everybody has their own sort of prejudices. Everybody's got bad patterns of thinking about some things that you need to look at. Like, I'm sure, while I certainly wouldn't say I'm racist, I will have prejudices that I need to look at, and assumptions that I make, and gut reactions I might make based on someone's appearance that might essentially be due to race. The thing I need to do is, when I have those, challenge them. And that's sort of really what it boils down to. But ultimately, if you're like denying that white privilege is a thing, that in itself is quite a privileged point of view. Saying you don't believe race is an issue because you haven't seen it, well, there you go. You haven't seen it because you're coming at it from a point of privilege. Black people, people of colour, people of different ethnic minorities in this country don't have a choice to wonder about whether white privilege exists, because they see it every day, because they are seeing the lack of privilege that they are treated with.
They are confronted with racism all the time.
Yeah,
in the way that people treat them and respond to them. And
having the choice whether to care about it is a privilege.
It really is. I tell you what, though, I know we're kind of running on a bit, but I really want to talk about this thing that I've been meaning to talk about for days and days.
Yeah, go for it.
And I'm going to try and do it as quickly as possible. It does need a little bit of context.
Okay.
Right? So,
yeah, I don't know what this is. I just know what the story is from.
Vince McMahon is the head of the wrestling company.
Yeah,
WWE.
He comes up every now and again on these blogs for any of our avid viewers. Seems like a bit of a character.
And he, about nearly 20 years ago now, he decided that he was getting too old to appear as a character on WWE television.
Right.
So he kind of wanted to write himself out of the show.
Right.
And he didn't want to just do that temporarily. He wanted to kind of make it so he
fake his own death.
Yes.
I was guessing.
So.
So Vince
he wasn't
McMahon,
trying
though.
to fake his death in real life. He was trying to do
Just
this in
a
a storyline
storyline.
on the show. But like, if you kill the character of Vince McMahon off,
You
then
kind
he
of have to
can't
be dead in real life, don't you? Like, not
Well,
actually dead, but
I mean,
don't they sort of try to not have like discrepancies between real life and
well,
a
I
thing
mean,
to be
people
publicly known?
obviously people would. I guess he would just have
Avoid doing public
not been
appearances.
as much of a public figure, I guess. Anyway, so he decided that on the show he was going to kill himself off, and they wouldn't be tempted to kind of come back into it or whatever.
Because it wouldn't make sense in the story and all that.
So what they did at the very end of an episode, they had him get into his limousine to drive away. The limousine exploded. Right, now, so we're to assume
way to go out with a bang.
Yeah, we had to assume he's died. Now, I don't know how that would have proceeded. I guess they would have had some sort of angle on it, because his daughter and son-in-law are still part of the program, and his son. So presumably they would have had some sort of angle of maybe them trying to figure out who it was that had done it. Maybe one of the wrestlers.
Yeah, I can imagine doing a big reveal, and actually that being quite good for story.
Plotline, yeah, sure. But then what happened almost immediately afterwards is I believe between then and the next episode of WWE television, one of the actual wrestlers who was on the roster at the time died in real life.
Oh God, okay.
I believe, and apologies if I'm getting this wrong, I believe it was Chris Benoit.
Right.
And
what happened to
that is a story that we do not have time for.
Okay.
Here. That is a story that takes 2 episodes of Dark Side of the Ring, and I will.
Okay.
I'll tell you about that. But he died in real life.
Right. So they kind of thought this is a bit of a poor taste.
Tasteless now to proceed with this angle. Right. So instead, Vince McMahon kind of came back on television and paid tribute to the wrestler who had died.
So did they sort of do like escape unscathed by some miracle of this exploding limousine, or did they just not talk about it?
Well, I think perhaps because they were doing a tribute to someone who'd actually died, even just alluding to he escaped unscathed from this life-threatening accident might have sent a bit off. So I think they just
had him on screen and didn't talk about it.
And kind of brushed it under the carpet and moved on. Anyway, that's all context that you need, but keep that in mind, it comes back. But we talked the other day on the vlog about an old guy who was in his 70s, and he was at a protest.
Yes.
And he kind of was trying to hand a leaflet to policemen.
Riot police in I can't remember what city it was in now. That's awful. Buffalo.
Peaceful 75-year-old man got pushed over with some force.
Yeah, cracked his head on the pavement. The footage is awful. You can see the blood pooling behind. It's really, and he really wasn't he's 75.
And what happened to him?
Last I heard, he was stable, conscious, but still in a serious condition. But yeah, thankfully, I think he'll make it through. But yeah, very nasty head injury.
So that was the story. Donald Trump tweeted about that.
Yep.
Basically saying, well, it's interesting that they got such a sort of spot-on kind of camera angle for that, for the filming of it, and it's, maybe he was planted there. Basically implying it was all a conspiracy, and maybe this guy was planted, and maybe they were deliberately trying to kind of catch the police out and make them look bad, and going conspiracy theory loco on this thing.
Why who is letting him tweet these things? Somebody's minder has let him off the lead. Man is a fucking deranged moron.
Now, Brian Gerwitz, who used to be he is the Rock's head writer. So
I've just realised the cat has come in minus its tag and bell, but still has the collar on.
So the Rock is the Rock's head writer. So when the Rock is doing a film, I think he gets involved, gets his own script team to kind of look at the scripts and things. And the reason he's the Rock's head writer is that he used to be a head writer on I think on SmackDown, one of the WWE programs, and worked very closely with the Rock, and he really liked his work. So he's working with The Rock now, not the WWE, but he was a head writer on WWE programming. And when Donald Trump was going conspiracy mad about this 75-year-old man, he tweeted saying, "Well, it's interesting. This is the same guy who rang up Titan Towers when Vince McMahon's limo exploded on air to check if Vince McMahon was all right or if he was really dead." And you go, it's weird how this very gullible man is suddenly really cynical about a thing that supports a political view that he holds.
He's a moron. But he's a dangerous moron. But he just Donald Trump is inexplicable. And America, sort your fucking shit out.
I want to thank.
If you vote him back in, I'm done with you.
But yeah, it's just like.
That'll teach
this
you.
guy is apparently so cynical and going, oh, well, maybe this isn't what it seems or what's going on, but sees someone explode on a television programme and rings up to check if they're actually dead.
That's almost sweet.
You might as well ring and check what's going on EastEnders.
I bet he was wondering what had happened to JR in Dallas. It's like, oh no, like, it's oh god. He's a worry, isn't he?
But I need to thank Ian Bowden, who's a friend of the show, for drawing my attention to that story. He's a fellow wrestling fan. But we've to tell that story. Oh, there's a dog whining.
Yes, Lucy whining.
Well, maybe
that is time for us to.
So we need to wrap up. But we've overrun again anyway.
Yeah.
But like and subscribe. There's no shame in it.
No shame in it, guys. What are you waiting for?
See you tomorrow.
Sort your lives out.
Bye.
Bye.